Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your Rant Line, Rave Line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there?
Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that Rave Line! Woohoo! Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio, episode 562, coming to you on Monday, September 30th. It is International Podcast Day. Hope you're excited. We're excited too. I don't know what that means for us, but we're going to celebrate nonetheless by looking back at USC's 38-21 win over the Wisconsin Badgers, the Trojans' first ever Big Ten Conference victory. We're going to take your calls, look at some emails, comments, and so much more as we revisit the game. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy, email address at rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227, Second Woodsboro Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. International Podcast Day. How much credence do you give into this? Is it truly the best holiday of the calendar year?
You know, it is the most important day of the year.
Mhm.
I think everyone would agree about that.
Yeah.
You know, it's important to honor the people who are doing the most important job
Mhm.
that you could possibly imagine. And
Right.
I personally think we should be patting ourselves on the back, and I think our listeners should be patting us on the back as well.
Hey, during COVID, we were deemed
essential workers.
We were essential workers by the state. So clearly, I think that shows our importance.
Yes.
And I think it's a great day. Today we get to park in, reserved parking spaces just for podcasters, which is nice. Use that plenty today. All the times I went out in 98-degree heat. Absolutely. And it's one of those days where internationally, like we're superstars.
We go out and we get there's the podcaster discount at restaurants. You guys might not know about that.
Yeah. It's a bummer they don't. It's a bummer the stuff that we get for that.
It's man, does it, if you've ever wondered, does it pay to be a podcaster? I can tell you it is an incredibly lucrative field. All of your everyone that you listen to that does podcasts, they are raking in the money. Yeah. They are living large.
Except for like Pat McAfee or something. He's not making any money.
Pat McAfee is he's definitely not making any money.
Joe Rogan, nothing. Not a dime.
Not a dime.
But us, it's coming out of our ears.
Oh yeah.
Just like we are coming out of your ears. Actually, we're going in your ears, right? I would hope we're going in your ears. So much stuff to talk about here on this episode. But I think we're going to start with the news because there's just one little tidbit of news. So let's get to it. Alicia, the Trojans are about to play their third game in 4 weeks on the Columbia broadcast service. It's service. It's not system. I thought it was system. I Googled the other day. It's service. CBS, 12:30 p.m., October 12th. The International College Football Day, by the way, October 12th. Trojans.
The second most important day of the year.
Yes, exactly. It's International Podcast Day, International College Football Day, and then my birthday in order. And your birthday following that, I would assume. But really, SC and Penn State, 12:30 p.m. On CBS. There was slight concern over like a 9 a.m. start. Not the case. SC is going to start at 12:30.
Yeah, I am happy for, I think, the majority of fans out there who seem to prefer playing in the afternoon window. I know that
It's my dad's favorite.
your dad loves the noon kickoffs. I know a lot of people love not having to stay late and leave the Coliseum super late. I know parents with kids love this. All of that. I'm very happy for you guys. Personally, as the most important person in the room today, because we are podcasters and we matter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't like kicking off at 12:30.
Why?
See, I start my work shift technically at 1:00. And I work through the USC game. And when USC starts at 12:30, that means that like I am jumping on while there's an initial wave of fallout from the morning games, trying to pay attention to USC, trying to get all of my writing done, trying to edit everybody else's writing. Like, there's the max number of staff writers that we have, the max number of contributors that we have that are, things move quickly in the early afternoon for us on fansided.com on the college football beat. And USC playing in that window is just really not my preference personally.
Do I blame Larry Scott for this?
My personal preference for USC playing is at 7:30 actually, and I'm weird, or 7:30 or 8, like that window, because
hold on, the chat chimes in.
Because my work shift ends at 9, and so then I can pay sole attention to the USC game for most of the game, and not be sort of doing my split consciousness that I have to do when USC is playing in the middle of my work shift. Right. So it's for me personally, I hate it, but I don't know.
Those are all valid reasons with work stuff. I get it. It's my dad's favorite time. He loves it. As a boomer, it's ideal for him. But I'm starting to come around. I'm not going to games this year. We decided for the podcast it's best to just not go to games, record the Carcasts, and have a better product and all that stuff because of that. And 12:30 is kind of nice. Wake up at 11:45, maybe 12:12. Set the alarm for 11:45, but actually get out of bed at 12:12. Game starts at 12:30. We podcast at 4. We're done at like 5:30, and then I can log on and rip packs on EAFC. It works out. It works out. Angelo in the chat says, "Can the fans please get to the seats on time? It was embarrassing seeing how empty the Coliseum looked at the start of the game on Saturday." I am going to echo this. First things first. I know people have complained that it's hard to get in the Coliseum, that the gates are slow and all this stuff. Okay. I don't doubt that that's the case. But if you know that that's the problem, well, why don't you get to the Coliseum a little bit earlier?
Well, and this is, Roger Dodger in the chat points out 12:30 is hard for tailgating, and
sure,
that's true. If you want to,
but you can breakfast tailgate.
I know you can breakfast tailgate, but
and you can post game tailgate.
The reason people get into the game late is because they're probably tailgating, and then the process of cleaning up the tailgate and getting everything back and everything, and then getting to.
But do you think that many people are tailgating?
I don't know. A lot of people tailgate. Here's my thing, though.
They do. Yes.
Here's my thing. My New Year's resolution this year was to stop making excuses for USC fans. So I'm not going to make excuses for USC fans. It sucks that the Coliseum is as empty as it is at kickoff, and those kickoff photos that come out every time are embarrassing. And you know what? When Oklahoma fans or other fans, dogpile on USC for not having real passionate fans and all that kind of stuff. Like, I know a million. I know a lot of really, really passionate USC fans.
Yeah.
But the proof is in the pudding. There are not 77,000 really passionate USC fans in Los Angeles on a weekly basis. And that is, I'm not going to make excuses for USC fans anymore.
Yeah.
Our listeners, I'm sure, are all really, I mean, obviously, because they listen to us, super passionate, not part of the problem.
No.
And unfortunately, the people who are part of the problem are not listening to this podcast.
They don't listen to us. They don't celebrate International Podcast Day.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that's sad. Personally.
Personally.
Because our listeners and our robots are there early. As soon as the gates open, they're making noise immediately. They're singing "Fight On." They're clapping. They're doing the YMCA if that's a thing. All that stuff. Here's the deal. Next week for the Penn State game, when you walk into the Coliseum, you walk through that tunnel, that tight tunnel.
I love that.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Walking through tunnel 12, get out there into the Coliseum. I want to tweet. Send us a tweet. Send us a text message. Something that you're in. You're in early. Get there early.
Get there early.
Yeah, get there early.
I am I'm weird. I'm neurotic and anxious. So this is probably why, but I am a huge fan of the get into any stadium or any sporting event at least an hour before the game is supposed to start kind of person. I love sitting.
Jake is crying listening
in a
to
stadium, especially the Coliseum. Like the Coliseum is just, you sit down in your seat, you look out at the peristyle, you take a deep breath, you breathe in that air, and just life is good. Like that's how I feel. So
when I was a kid, me and my dad would follow the band the entire way. And back in the day, the band used to get to the Coliseum with about 35 minutes before kickoff, and it was perfect. We walk in, we'd see the very end of warm-ups, and then the game would start. Everything perfect. The band eventually started getting there a little bit earlier, like 45 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever it is now. But that's still ample time to get in and everything. It's even more time, right? But I used to love when you would go to like a Rose Bowl and you don't have the experience of following the band and all that stuff. And you're there and you walk in and there's a slight disappointment that you look up on the clock and it's like 86 minutes till kickoff. And you're like, how am I going to last 86 minutes? But then you're sitting there and like, you're watching the guys walk out. You're watching warm-ups, watching everybody fill up. You're watching all those stupid ads for Nationwide Insurance or whatever it is. Like, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. Fred says, fans getting in their seats late, while the Trojan players clearly are also not ready to start games recently as well. I mean,
that's fair enough.
That is valid. And Hank says, I hate missing a play. Me too.
Again, anxious and neurotic. It's not good.
Yeah. Don't want to miss a play, and you don't want to miss a play over on Underdog Fantasy too. Because Underdog Fantasy, one of America's favorite apps for fantasy, you can go log in at underdogfantasy.com, download the app, win up to 1,000 times your money by just choosing whether you think your favorite players will go higher or lower than their stat projections. I'm pretty sure if you go to Underdog Fantasy right now, you can look for the Penn State game, SC Penn State, and it'll say, like, presumably, I'm sure, I would assume, percentage filled of the Coliseum higher or lower, 67% at game time. Yeah. And you should take higher because you listening as a route bot, you're going to be in there, right? You're going to be in there. But making picks on Underdog Fantasy is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code Reign of Troy, all one word, REIGNOFTROY. We can spell. Making picks on Underdog Fantasy is so straightforward. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Reign of Troy, to claim your new customer special of a free pick, and your deposit offer must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska. Present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And if you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Alicia, a lot of stuff to get to about SC's win over Wisconsin. I've listened to a bunch of Wisconsin podcasts recently. You know what it is? I always said that like the Wisconsin accent was like a Wisconsin. That's not what it is. It's that there's no, like we would say Wisconsin, right? Wisconsinites don't say Wisconsin. It's like W apostrophe Conson.
Wisconsin.
But like with the accent, Wisconsin.
So
no, I'm screwing it up. No. If you're from Wisconsin, call us and let us know how badly we botched that. But let's talk about the Trojans win 38-21. They cover something that didn't look like it was going to be the case early in the game. If you're watching us here on YouTube, this episode is titled "Why is USC so good later in games?" Alicia, this was the comment that I think was plentiful throughout Twitter and the YouTube comments and all that stuff after Saturday's game. So why is that the case?
I don't know. It's very frustrating too, because I went into my rewatch. Obviously, every time I do a rewatch, I go in with a certain perception, and then sometimes that perception is reinforced and sometimes that perception is undercut. And in this particular game, I sort of expected to see USC's offensive line be really crappy, and that being one of the reasons why USC started out so slow.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and say that USC's offensive line is very good, but they certainly weren't terrible in this game. Even early in this game, I thought they were mostly adequate, and I was a bit surprised about that. The issue with USC's offense, which felt like it moved the ball outside of the run game, which they just never really got very much push or openings for the running backs to get through. Outside of sort of the run game not exactly getting going because the blocking wasn't there. The offense, especially the passing offense, was operating rather well. I thought that Miller Moss was doing an excellent job. I thought that USC's receivers were available to him, and USC was moving the ball despite being in second and long and third and long way too often because their first down plays were just pretty ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
The issue was like that USC just made big catastrophic mistakes, like on an individual level.
You know what it reminded me of? Games of the Clay Helton era where you would do a super deep rewatch on Patreon. And I remember I don't remember what game it was specifically, but like you had this thing outlined about like, why didn't SC score for this long? It's literally because this drive failed because of this one thing. This drive failed because of this one thing. This drive failed because of this one thing. And that's what the first half was on offense.
I mean, I have a little bit of that here. USC's first drive succeeds because Emmanuel Pregnon and Kate Eldridge do a really good job of opening up the blocks on that fourth down conversion to set up USC's touchdown. So there you have success. The second drive fails because Miller Moss actually does have time to throw, and he delivers an accurate ball to Jay Fair, and Jay Fair simply just drops it on third down.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between that drive failing and other drives continuing later on in the game when USC had receivers catching the ball on third down and moving the sticks. The third drive fails because Miller Moss throws an interception that he should frankly never throw. The Zachariah Branch is not open. And yes, Jonah Monheim does get pushed back towards Miller Moss, but compared to the kinds of throws under pressure or decisions under pressure that we have seen Miller Moss make 95% of the time, that's just a bad one on the quarterback. Just straight up a massive costly mistake. And then the fourth drive, which I dubbed the ouch Alani Noah drive. Alani Noah actually did better in this game across the board than I felt like he did. But the reason it felt like he did so poorly in this game was because drive number 4, he was at the scene of every crime, including just letting rushers through to set up USC to end up in a fourth down situation, and then on the fourth down gets a penalty, which, by the way, is rough on him because I failed to see the flinch. I failed to see the false start on replay there. So, got a little unlucky, but he wasn't good on the drive either. So just those first 4 drives of the first half, the second, third, and fourth drives, USC is moving the ball perfectly fine until the critical error. That
Well, it's the same way
drive.
for the fifth drive is the fumble. Right?
Yeah, the fifth drive is, again, USC is moving the ball down the field with relative ease, outside of first down efficiency being pretty poor, but moving the ball down the field. And then what happens? There's a breakdown on the offensive line. They get to Miller Moss and he fumbles, and that has now happened on multiple games. And if USC wants to be truly competitive, that needs to stop. But those are the critical errors that theoretically, if USC just cleans up, again, we're talking about just clean up 4 plays. And, I think that you can only say that so often before it becomes, it's sort of what you are. And it's not just like, oh, we just need to clean those up. This was Clay Helton's line was always like, we need to look at the tape and clean that up. And it was like, well, yeah, but you keep saying that and you don't clean it up. So, what is it? These aren't aberrations. These are what you are.
Right.
But for right now, it just feels like USC is in that phase of the season where one drive it's a wide receiver, one drive it's the quarterback, one drive it's the offensive line. And the offensive line is also more often in that phase of it's one guy on this play. It's one guy on this play. It's one guy on this play. And as a team, in order to truly succeed, you need all of those cogs to be working together at the same time and everybody doing their job and not making errors. Yeah. And right now, USC just simply has too many individuals making individual errors that weigh them down. And you see that on the defensive side of the ball too. Against Michigan, it was obviously the biggest problem in that game. In this game, to me, this game was far more about USC. Basically the defensive front not doing enough in this game. I think that they did miss Akili Arnold in the end.
On the backside,
on the at safety, sort of cleaning up some of those runs.
Yeah.
But USC's defensive front was giving ground too often. They were giving the quarterback too much time to throw. And when you're letting a team like Wisconsin break a long run because you have a missed tackle, but that's one thing. But we also saw several drives from Wisconsin that they were just being rather efficient on a down by down basis, and USC's defense wasn't. So like that, I think that to me is the bigger concern coming out of this game. Like I thought my biggest concern would be the offensive line coming out of this game, and trust me, I'm still plenty worried about the offensive line against Penn State and Notre Dame, but I'm beginning to get more concerned about USC's defensive front, not from a perspective that like the defensive, like I don't think the defensive front is making very many mistakes, and I think that's my concern. Because it's not mistakes that are the problem. I think this defensive front has a ceiling, and it's lacking true impact players that like Danton Lynn's defense at UCLA. Like we talked all offseason, who is USC's Leatu Latu,
Right. And the Murphy bros.
who are USC's Murphy brothers. And USC has found some very, I think, reliable and capable fill-ins in Gavin Meyer and Nate Clifton, but they're not impact players in those positions. And this is where USC does miss Bear Alexander, because Bear Alexander has that sort of impact ability from the interior of the defensive line. And on the edges, I think that USC is not getting enough production from a guy like Anthony Lucas, who, we said against LSU, he was getting close, but at a certain point, you can't just be getting close. You need to start closing down and sacking the quarterback or disrupting the quarterback's throws.
Yeah.
And, USC isn't getting that from Anthony Lucas, and they're not getting it from Jamil Muhammad. And I think when you look across that board, there is a talent deficiency that is just facts. It's I'm not speaking ill of any of those players, because I think USC is getting much more out of those players than more talented players on previous defensive lines that were completely unreliable. But the lack of an impact player there, even just one. And I think that USC was kind of banking on Anthony Lucas being that guy, and I'm just not. I don't know. I'm not seeing it from him, and I really want to see that from him. By my eyes, on my rewatch, the only guy who really popped was Braylon Shelby, and that's. I don't know if it just needs to come to a point where Braylon Shelby starts getting more snaps and having more ability to take over, but like right now, I mean, I looked it up. USC's defensive linemen, that means ends and tackles, have 0 tackles for loss and 0 sacks. No, sorry. The starting tackles and ends have 0 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. The only defensive tackle with a tackle for loss is Devin Tompkins, who, by the way, is really admirable. Again, a guy who's probably playing out of position and undersized for being a DT, but I thought he did a pretty decent job in there. And he does give USC a little bit of pop in terms of creating some disruption behind the line of scrimmage, but 0 tackles for loss and 0 sacks from starting defensive linemen is not it's not good enough. And I will give USC some grace here slightly, because LSU has only given up 2 sacks all season. Michigan didn't throw the ball, and so there were just no sacks to be had.
Right.
And Wisconsin has a veteran offensive line that doesn't give up a ton of pressure. They've allowed 5 sacks in 4 games. So, I don't think that USC has been been in a position to take a lot of opportunities, because the level of difficulty has been slightly high against some of these teams.
Mm-hmm.
But like even against Utah State, Anthony Lucas, Jamil Muhammad, Gavin Meyer, Nate Clifton, 0 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. Like this becomes a problem against teams like Wisconsin,
who have great offensive lines. Yeah.
Who have offensive lines and want to run the ball. And, if Wisconsin had a better quarterback, I think they could have made USC pay more.
Yeah. LA Friend in the chat says the defense isn't creating any negative plays, quarterback pressure, sacks, which are needed to put better offenses behind the chains. I agree. I also think, though, look at how successful SC's defense is without that. And that's, you can look at that 2 ways, right?
Yeah.
Like one side of it is, well, SC had defensive lines that struggled in the past. 2017, right? There were a lot of injuries. Notre Dame ran right down their throats in that game, right? But it didn't help that they couldn't tackle. And so when, running backs got to the second level and the third level, that they just kept on running. this team is so sound in the little things like tackling, and I think there's really good linebacker play, which we haven't seen in years, that really helps not make the defensive line issues a problem. Like it's not, and so one of the ways to look at it is like, yeah, but they can tackle, so it's not that big of a deal. The other way is, but imagine how good this defense could be if they could also get more out of the defensive line, right? Like there's two ways, and also
it's a limiting factor.
Yeah, it's a limiting factor, but it's 4 games into the season. They have the ability to grow. They have the ability to sort of figure it out there. I think it's going to help that when they going forward, there's a lot of good offensive lines that they're going to play, but Wisconsin and LSU are probably two of the best
ones, yeah.
On the entire schedule. So, we're going to see how that goes. When going back to the original question, though, why is SC so good later in games? I think for me, listening to Kamari Ramsey talk to the guys over at Tunnel Vision, listening to like post-game scrums and everything, everybody's asked, what is changing in the second half, right? And everybody's go-to answer basically is, oh, well, we just remind you to play with more intensity in the second half, have more intensity. And on the one hand, I think that that's a convenient thing to say because you don't necessarily want to go into any specifics of adjustments for strategic reasons and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, is that not actually literally the case? Like, in this game, I know SC's second half, they outscore Wisconsin 28-0. They were outscored 21-10 in the first half. But like you talked about, that first half was all about little mistakes. And the second half, they just stopped doing those mistakes. But when you're watching the football and you're watching play in and play outs and how drives are going, I don't know that much actually changed from the first half to the second half. It was more so that they just started not making the mistakes. They cleaned up. There was more focus in that sense. So like compared to the Michigan game, where there was a very clear change, especially on offense, because they shuffled the personnel on the offensive line. Against Wisconsin, I think it was for the offense, it was just a matter of, okay, we're going to catch the ball on third down. All right. Miller Moss is not going to make
that interception,
that pass. They're not going to have a fumble because maybe they get just a little bit better pass protection in the second half. They're not going to have a penalty that takes away an opportunity for a 4th and short. Like all those little things sort of stopped. And then the answer is, 3 touchdown drives, back to back on offense.
Yeah. And that is, like you said, I was slightly surprised because I expected it to be a tale of two halves. And certainly on offense, it was not a tale of two halves. On offense, the offense looked more or less the same in the first half versus the second half, with the exception of they didn't shoot themselves in the foot in the second half, and they capped, they found the end zone because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, it did feel more like that because it did again feel like the defensive line tightened up. The defensive front stopped giving 2-3 yards of ground on every run that Wisconsin did. But also the defense, I think, benefited from Wisconsin's issues on offense, which, Locke missed a ton of passes. They fumbled, they muffed a punt. They had drops. They had their own issues that every team has. But the big thing for me was the defensive front, the defensive tackles in particular, did seem to stand their ground better in the second half. And I think that put Locke in more situations to have to throw. And when you put a again, the vast majority of college football quarterbacks are not actually that good. More on that in a second. And when you put them in those situations, often you will end up having them miss their throw. Like that's something you can slightly rely upon defensively. But in the chat, Hank asks, is it more of a gap control integrity thing that we're not seeing sacks? Winnis says our defense is different from the UCLA defense. Our D-line, 2 gaps in the end, set the edges, which creates the opportunities for the linebackers to make the tackles. Yes, absolutely. And this is, I think, why we're seeing so much good linebacker play is because the defensive line is because the front 7 as a whole is playing about as well as a USC front 7 has played in several years. So like, again, I'm not saying that that the defensive line is doing bad or that USC's defensive front is bad. Like the front 7, like I said, is playing as well as a USC front 7 has played probably since 2013. Maybe you throw in 2017 in there.
Yeah.
Sorry, 2016, 2017. But the issue that I'm seeing here is, again, what are the elements that separate USC from being this mid-tier Big Ten team versus a contending for the Big Ten title kind of team.
Yeah.
And it's that USC, that they lack impact players on their defensive front. And what I mean by that is Wisconsin and Michigan and LSU and other teams have been able to get a lot of pressure on Miller Moss while bringing no extra rushers. 4 against 5, they're getting pressure. Even 3 against 5, occasionally, they're getting pressure. If you watch back USC's defense, 4 against 5, they're getting no pressure, or the pressure's coming late or too late. They're not generating the kinds of hurries and disruptions and stuff against the passing, the opposing passing game that
without
a blitz that allows a defense to truly dominate. Because if you can only rush 4 and bring the rest back in coverage, it makes it a million times harder for the quarterback to do anything. That's why what Miller Moss is doing is so damn impressive. And I want to talk about that in a second again. But the difference between elite defenses and just solid defenses is generating pressure from 4 on 5. And right now USC isn't getting is not at that level. And that's what was the difference maker for UCLA. Leatu Latu and the Murphy twins could go 4 on 5 and could get to the quarterback. And that's the gap that USC needs to close. And I'm not saying they can't possibly do that, because Anthony Lucas does have talent.
Yeah.
And I think Braylon Shelby can continue to grow.
But before you get to the quarterback thing, I just want to throw in the thought, you look at this defense, SC's defense the last few years, not just under Grinch, but under Pendergast, Orlando, whoever it is, in the last decade or so, there's been guys who have been very good in tackles for loss situations, right? Look at Tuli Tuipulotu, led the country in tackles for loss 2 years ago, right? Like, where he was tied for it, whatever it was. He had a ton of sacks. What did that get SC? Nothing. So I understand that there's a limiting factor in, maybe you can't be a top 5 defense without generating havoc, because you ideally want to, create havoc. You want to, be good in coverage and all of that. At the same time, given that SC's got an offensive coordinator that's highly regarded in Lincoln Riley, you have an offense that is not as explosive and reliable as they've been in the last 2 years, but still pretty good. They don't need to be a top 5 defense. And then on top of that, if this is a defense that, just doesn't get a lot of havoc, but gets stops, I kind of don't care. You want more out of the guys, but I don't think this is a problem. You know what I mean?
I think it is. I think USC, I will say it again, this feels like a 20-point defense. I think that this defense can win a lot of games for USC and give USC opportunities to win a lot of games. But again, if you're talking about what is the difference between beating Penn State and losing Penn State? What is the difference between beating Notre Dame and losing to Notre Dame? It's these
Sure.
kinds of things. It's these kinds of
For sure.
of individual impact kind of plays. And you might get individual impact kind of plays from elsewhere on the defense that make up for that, like Mason Cobb having a pick six, or like Kamari Ramsey going
Looking
beast
incredible.
mode.
Yeah.
Like, so that
But
kind of stuff.
I guess my point is, it's not that I don't care that SC's not getting havoc plays. It's more so that, like, to me, SC's got to prove that they're a 20-point defense before anything else. These are about taking steps forward, right? You got to prove you're a 20-point defense. Right now, they're a 17-point defense, much better in the second half, but 17-point defense is where they're at in terms of scoring defense through 4 games. That's good. But, like, yes, could ideally, or would it be great for them to be a 10-point defense like the 2008 team? Yeah, but, like, you got to get there incrementally.
Well, and Angelo in the chat says, I feel like havoc plays, you overcommit and are more prone to giving up big plays. This defense keeps everything in front of them. Yes. That's why this defense is functional. That's why this defense is solid to, like, if not good / great, because we've seen USC defenses in the past that would create a lot of havoc, but then that would go to nothing because they'd give up everything else because they were undisciplined. So, like, again, you want a disciplined defense that does keep stuff in front of them. And then you want that little bit more. Like, that's what makes the difference. And yes, is it being slightly nitpicky? Maybe. But I am looking at whether or not this team can be a playoff team, and not whether or not this team can beat a team like Wisconsin.
Yeah. Get to your quarterback thing, and then
I just have a very small thing to say about the quarterback thing.
Okay.
Miller Moss is very, very, very good. And if you think that he isn't USC's best option at quarterback, then I don't know what to tell you. He is so freaking good. Like, rewatching this game, he's so good navigating what he has to navigate with USC's line, knowing that the defense can drop 8 at times and still get pressure, and he's still finding guys, he's still finding opportunities, and he's showing that he has some mobility, he has some athleticism that teams will have to account for.
Yeah.
And most of all, the thing I wanted to say is he is outstanding on third downs. That's why USC's offense continues to tick over, because Miller Moss is so damn good on third down. 11 of 17 on third down. The problem there is you shouldn't be in 17 third down situations, but being 11 and 17, that's your quarterback being really, really, really good. I want USC fans to appreciate that quarterback play like Miller Moss is giving USC. Most teams around the country don't get to have that kind of quarterback running their offense.
I was listening to a couple Wisconsin podcasts, and multiple times it was like, yeah, but they got Miller Moss, and, like, we don't have a Miller Moss kind of thing. I think that's a good point. Okay, I want to get to some stats really quick before we get to over under, and then open up a big mailbag. Got a lot to get to, so I want to run through these stat updates pretty quickly here. New metrics. FEI. The Trojans are 11th overall, which matches where the Trojans are in the AP. 8th in FEI offense. That seems about where they've been under Lincoln Riley. 24th in FEI defense.
Top 25, baby.
24th in defensive points per game. They are 9th in defensive scoring drive percentage, allowing teams to score on just 25% of their drives. You look at a lot of the numbers are not, noteworthy. But I think when it comes down to overall success, which is like drive success, that's where SC is nails. And I think that is big for the Trojans. SC's win over Wisconsin was the first while having a negative turnover margin since the COVID comeback against ASU. USC's opponents have rushed 58 times in the second half of games. They've gained a first down on only 7 of those. That seems nuts.
Very nice.
To me. Opponents have completed 21 passes on third down. 21 completions on third down by the opponents. Only 7 first downs.
This defense does a really good job of forcing the quarterback to throw short of the sticks.
Yeah, it's uncanny. SC has allowed 35 first downs in the first 3 games combined. The first 4 games combined, right?
Yeah.
Last year, the last 3 games combined, 35 first downs. Last year against Colorado, they had 32 in 1 game. Khalil Mullins' 63-yard run in the Michigan game accounts for 44.3 of the rushing yards SC is allowed in the fourth quarter.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And talking more about the rush defense stuff, SC is allowing 5.01 yards per carry. That's not good. That's 16th in the Big Ten. Like, that is not good. Like, you do not want that. But if you take out the 3 long runs that Michigan had, it drops to 3.78. That's a yard and a quarter is accounted for by 3 runs. If 3.78 was their true average, which obviously it is not, but if it was, it'd be SC's lowest rush defense number in yards per carry since 2011. I think it goes to show how good SC can be if they eliminate the big plays. Obviously, every team gives up big plays in some sense. So I'm not going to sit here and say that like the 501 is not a real number. It's a real number.
Yeah.
But like, I think this is a point of like, it can be so much better. There's a lot of areas for SC to improve in the numbers in that sense. But I think it also goes back to scoring drive percentage. 9th in the country, 25% on defense. Like, that's that's in a weird way what you care about more than anything else, right? It's just limiting the ability to allow teams to score. All right, Alicia, let's get to over under. We're going to run through this pretty quick and then get to a pretty big mailbag.
So you're going over. I'm going bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take. I'm going to do an under here.
All right. I say this, and then if you're watching on the screen, I don't have the thing there. Where is it? There it is. Does this work?
We are all wonky.
We are all really wonky and weird. There we go. All right. Over under. Alicia. We went into the week with you leading with a 10-8 record. I was 8-12. Let's get through this. Your first over under was 0.5 Wisconsin 4th down conversions. It was under. I took the over on that, locked you into the under, and it was under because it was 0. The Badgers were 0 of 2, including that 4th down stop in the third quarter that was not good.
Yeah, and that 4th down stop is a really, really bright spot for USC's defense. That's what you do. That's what happens when all 11 guys on the field are doing their job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Next one, I said over under 4.5 10+ yard rushes for the Badgers. It was a line that you went under on, and it was under. It was 3. They had 3. Exactly 3.
Which is, again, show great progress from USC's defense. It's really good to see.
Yeah, 100%. Next one, you said over under 5.5 Wisconsin tackles for loss. I took the under on that. Locks you into the over, and it was under. It was 4. They did not create havoc plays themselves.
Yeah, I think they had a lot of limiting USC to like 1 yard or 0 yards in the run, but they weren't really getting into the backfield. And again, Miller Moss does a hell of a job to prevent that number from going higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one, I said over under 182.5 Wisconsin passing yards. You took the over. Locks me into the under. Alicia, it was 180. I have to, it's International Podcast Day. We're gonna, self-fillet a little bit, and I think we have to here because these over/under lines we did this week, they were good. They were really damn good. Look at that, 180. It was the line was 182.5. So right there. Last one for you said over under 300.5 Miller Moss passing yards. I took the under on that. Thought he would get under. I said, if I remember right, I thought it would be like 275 or something like that. Locks you into the over. It was over 308.
Had some narrow ones this time. Yeah.
Right there. All right.
Which, by the way, again, was the first 300-yard performance by a quarterback against a Wisconsin defense since last year, one of 3 over the last 2 years.
Yeah, pretty good. Last one, I said over under 7.455 Quentin Joyner rushing yards per carry. It was a line where you said under, locks me into over. It was over 8.2. He just delivers, man. He just delivers.
He does. I would give him more carries personally, but I don't have any problem with them giving Woody Marks the carries. So it's rough. I get it, but yeah.
All right. Weekly scoreboard. We each went 3-3 per usual. Season standings. You're 13-11. I'm 11-13. The Rotbots, there was one person who went 6-0. It was Jensen SC11. Also, I think it's interesting. One person went 6-0. Of all these over-unders, every single one, the result was a result that favored SC. Like if you were truly making all homer picks, you would have gotten 6-0, and there was one person who did. Jensen SC. Only one of you Rotbots were that confident in the Trojans? Just one? Wow. Ye of little faith. Little faith. Season leaders, it is Jensen SC at 21-3. So far this season. Pickle drops down to 20-4, still right there. Scotty C holding down the fort in third with 18-6. A lot of carnage beyond that point. So there's a pretty clear top 3. That's over under. That's how the over crumbles. Alicia, your score prediction was 35-9. My score prediction was 31-13. The final score was 38-21. I almost had the margin, but you almost had SC's total score.
Yeah.
So there you go. Before we get to the mailbag, big shout out to our good friend Tim in LA. Big ups. Big cheers and a big swig of Arrowhead or whatever that is.
This is Alani Cosmic Stardust energy drink.
Are you actually drinking an energy drink?
Yeah.
Wow.
Shocking, I know, that I would be consuming caffeine.
I know. No, but thank you, Tim in LA. Tim in LA says, we get it. It's International Podcast Day. Take my super chat with a wink. Thank you, Tim. You didn't have to. We appreciate you nonetheless. You guys are all awesome. And we're going to a bar after this, and I think everybody's going to walk in and cheer when we walk in, and hopefully buy us all drinks.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens every time we walk into a bar, though.
This is true.
So it's not really anything different.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
You've got mail.
All right, Alicia, we got to start. It's the big mailbag. We got to start with the review. We got a review on Apple Podcasts from JB. Not related to Phil Longo, it says. Great job as always. Fun fact, Tracy Longo of Longo Toyota actually played women's basketball at SC from 81 to 85.
The trivia that the Rotbots bring out is fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you for the review, but also thank you for the trivia.
Yeah, I love when a stupid joke ends up being factual. There's always a USC connection to everything.
Yeah.
There always is. All right, we had a bunch of calls. If you're wondering about the rant line, there wasn't we got a bunch of calls, but there wasn't enough calls to really make into a rant line per se. It just wasn't. There were a lot of calls that were like, "This is a call. We'll just play the whole call."
Yeah.
So no rant line, but there was a rant to play from the 757 area code. I think that's Virginia. This is from the first half.
Can somebody tell me why we look so undisciplined and just completely unprofessional? 3 turnovers in the first half, getting beat in pretty much every category, special teams, offense, defense. Wisconsin has a backup quarterback. This is year 3 under Lincoln Riley. When are we going to start to look around and say, hey, maybe we need to evaluate the core tenets of what we're preaching here? I had to cut it off. It just was that bad. I had to turn the channel. I'm watching the Colorado and UCF game. I want to actually watch a good quarterback and good receiver. I guess I gotta watch Colorado these days. So that's a terrible product. USC football is in a really bad spot, and I just don't have a whole lot of faith it's going to get turned around anytime soon.
Thanks for the call. That was a call from the second quarter.
I hope he turned the game back on.
I would hope. We got an email from Tom that said, "Is this team just bad?" As the subject says, until further notice, I'm going to assume LSU and Michigan are not good teams either. Thanks, Tom. That also in the second quarter.
The second quarter I was down bad, so I can't judge. Michael can attest to this. I was down bad. But again, I think that what you see from USC is partly the general state of sloppiness that you see across college football. I imagine that Georgia fans were watching Georgia in the first half and saying how poorly coached they looked. Everybody thinks, we were having this conversation, everybody thinks that they get out coached when they lose.
Yes.
So it's just one of those things. I do think USC needs to figure out its slow starts, because it will bite them in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing you can take heart in is that the second half adjustments have been outstanding, and that is a sign of good coaching.
Yeah, and even if the adjustment is just mindset, I think that is an adjustment. Let's get to 3 calls that we got. I don't know if these were related. Two of these were on the same call, but I don't know if these 2 calls were related in any sense, but you'll see that they are in the same category.
Go Trojans!
Followed by
Fight on, baby!
And
Fight on, baby!
there you go.
Oh yeah.
Those could all just be new drops.
We should number 1, yes. Number 2, it should have just been a rant line with those.
I just want, where's Witherspoon? Witherspoon?
Where's Witherspoon?
A 9-year-old boy
competition
outside of London. Where is he? What is he thinking? Is he still 9 years old? I think is the question too. Email from Tony. Michael, Alicia, this is Tony from the NORPA. That was a dominant second half. Miller was outstanding. Jacoby is a beast. The O-line did a nice job after halftime. The defense was brutal. I got one question. What the hell's going on with the first half? Got to come out of the gates better than that, or it's going to cost us down the road. I'll take the win. Fight on, Tony.
Yeah, I totally agree. No arguments there from me.
Yeah, I think it sums it up. SC's got to get better. I think it's nice having seen that SC can get punched in the mouth and get right back up and punch somebody else in the mouth. But you don't want to have to do that every time. It's playing with fire. Let's go to a voicemail we got from Jackson in Arizona.
Hey, Red and Troy, this is Jackson in Arizona. After an awesome win against the Wisconsin Badgers, that first half was excruciating and very frustrating, but glad they made some second half adjustments. seeing Miller Moss ball out, Jacoby Lane grabbing just amazing catches to win. Let's beat Minnesota. Fight on.
Thanks for the call, Jackson. As always, yeah, Jacoby Lane, pretty good, huh?
Jacoby Lane, I'm so happy because we talked about Jacoby Lane being a potential breakout player for USC this year, and it's so great to see him live up to that because USC needs somebody to emerge as the go-to guy, and right now it feels like Jacoby Lane is the go-to guy, has the potential to be the go-to guy, and maybe we will end up in a situation where USC just there's a different go-to guy every game, but
yeah,
I think personally that Jacoby Lane is just emerging as that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Let's go to a voicemail we got from Fred.
Hey, Rainer Troy, this is LA Fred calling. Well, the game was once again the tale of two halves. The frustrating part is SC clearly didn't learn any lessons from what they went through last week in Michigan. How in the world do you fall behind a rebuilding Wisconsin team that got embarrassed by 4 touchdowns their last game out? You're a 2-touchdown favorite at home, and yet you go into halftime losing by 11 points. Well, I'll tell you how it happened. You start off with terrible offensive line play. You turn the ball over 3 times. You drop passes on 3rd down. You have 3rd and 4th down penalties that take you from short and manageable to long plays that you're not converting. You miss tackles left and right on defense. You get beat by big-ass plays again. And once again, you have Lincoln Riley with terrible clock management. That's how you get down at halftime to a team you should be owning. Luckily, went through and made some halftime adjustments, or just the guys in the locker room decided that the heck with this, we're not losing to these guys. And they came out in the second half and they started playing better. I look at the end of the game, and you have time of possession. The Trojans win that 40 minutes to 20. They outscored them 28-0. The total yards were 470 to 280. 29 first downs for SC, 13 for Wisconsin. That's how you turn an 11-point deficit into a 17-point win. But why it has to take adjustments or ass chewing at halftime, I'm still kind of puzzled, because that certainly is not a winning recipe for success. Hopefully this stuff will get figured out so we don't have to deal with this every single week. It is my fear that with the offensive line and no relief coming on the horizon probably until next year, that we're going to be involved in games like this the remainder of the season. Let's have a good week. Beat the Gophers. Fight on, everybody.
Thanks for the call, Fred, as always. And yeah, I think you hit every point.
I will say, I don't think Lincoln Riley's clock management was the issue at the end. I think Jacoby Lane being an idiot and not getting out of bounds was the bigger issue
in this game. Yeah. The other thing in terms of clock management, I think there's 2 factors in general. A, every team is seemingly bad at clock management. B, I think one of Lincoln Riley's MOs with clock management is to slow play it.
Yeah.
And I think his thought process, at least the way that it comes off, right, is okay, we're going to slow play this because we don't want to, go balls to the wall and then throw 3 incompletions, and all of a sudden they've got a chance to come down and have the ball at the end too. And so there's a little bit of a slow play, okay, are we going to have success on this drive? Because if we are, then let's go. If not, then all right, we'll take it to half. And I think that it's I can't say that that's a bad thing. That sounds logical and well reasoned to me. And it worked out in the LSU game if they would have made the field goal.
I think he would argue that it's better to be deliberate, if a little bit slower,
get the plays right,
faster and frantic. Yeah, that would be my guess. Is that always going to work out? No, but I'm not as I tend not to expect very much from any coach when it comes to end of half or game time management.
Those are frantic situations.
I spend my entire weekend watching every single coach not be able to navigate this. So it's not as big a deal to me.
Yeah. The slow play does, I think it's frustrating to watch. But I think it puts more effort into each play, but also more stakes on each play too.
Yeah, and another thing to point out, Richard in the chat says the dumb substitution rules right now are causing clock management issues.
Yeah.
I still want an explanation as to why a defense can take 15 seconds off of a play clock while given their time to substitute. Like that should be a penalty on the defense.
Or there should be something that triggers like a bonus.
Yeah,
thing.
like
because Shotgun was talking about it from the fourth down play that Michigan had last week, right before the first Mullins touchdown. That was a play where if SC slow played the substitution, they could have forced Michigan into the delay of game. And maybe that's something that they'll do going forward. At the same time, that seems crazy that that's even a thing.
Yeah.
So I agree.
I don't know. If I was a defensive coordinator, I'd think about seeing how far I could push the limits on that particular thing, because Wisconsin sent that defensive lineman out and there were 15 seconds on the play clock.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. HR Pick and Stuff says this guy's voice needs to go on the Rant Line intro. Fred is on there. He is on there. Fred's awesome. Let's go to a call from Dan in Valley Village.
Hey, Rant, it's Dan from Valley Village. I got to say two things. First, I couldn't agree more about the second half teams being very similar to the Pete Carroll era. It was one of those things where I couldn't put my finger on it, and yet it seemed so familiar until Alicia said it, and then I was like, oh my, this is 100% right. That being said, there was something about the Pete Carroll teams that I still trusted more than this team. So when we are down by 11 to Wisconsin, I'm sitting there and I am not trusting that Lincoln Riley's going to make the necessary adjustments. I am fearful that he's not going to. And maybe that's just I'm a scoring lover, so beaten down that I'm thinking the worst of it. So maybe I just got to give Lincoln a better chance, give the coaches a better chance. Regardless, what a turnaround. I loved it. And second, I have to commend you, Michael. Your transitions for the commercials in the Carcasts are so chef's kiss. I cannot get enough of it. It makes me chuckle because they're so dry, but I just got to compliment you. They're a blessing. So anyway, fight on.
Thanks, Dan. As always, we got a new drop on the pod.
Have to commend you, Michael.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Peanut butter sucks.
Have to commend you, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
False.
Thank you. Yeah. Nuts don't belong in cookies.
Have to commend you, Michael.
Yeah. and then I can just put in.
You have really good food takes.
Yeah, and just alternate between
have
them.
To commend you, Michael.
It's great. Like this is what more could you want on International Podcast Day? Isn't it good? Anyways, the Pete Carroll stuff I think is interesting in the point of like why, and yeah, West Texas Mike nails it in the chat. Like Pete Carroll's teams won championships. That's the difference. Yes. The results for everything comes down to, do you have a track record of winning with this team? If the answer is yes, then you can get away with anything. If the answer is no, then you can't get away with anything. Like that's what it comes down to. Like when one of the biggest like narratives that I hate this phrasing is, oh, this team doesn't have an identity. You know what that means? It means this team isn't successful at something.
Yeah.
Like that's all it means. It doesn't mean like, you know what? Your team's identity might just be that they're not good. Like they're mediocre. They're not good at this. They're what, like that's what your team's identity is. What you are.
Yeah.
Like not being good doesn't mean that you don't have an identity. That might be what your identity is, right?
Yeah.
And it comes down to like your faith in a coach comes down to winning also. If you win, people will say you have an identity. If you win, people will be, trusting of what you say. If you win, people will like your press conferences. If you win, you can do this. Your recruiting is fine, because if you don't, then no matter what you recruit, high or low, whatever it is, like that's going to be a problem. Either you just get the prima donna types who you need more 3-star grinders, or you win with the 3-star grinders and it's like, see, he can develop, like whatever it is. Yeah. All the narratives change, all the vibes change if you win. And Lincoln Riley's won a lot of games but he hasn't consistently done it at SC yet.
And
until he does, you're going to have more faith in a second half rebound.
Yeah. Also, I think that we didn't have the opportunity to see second half rebounds over the last 2 years of Lincoln Riley because the defense wasn't being coached to deliver that. And so I think we saw a lot of USC's offense trying to carry the team, and eventually that ran out. But what a difference a defense makes. By the way, Rich SC, who by the way is original Rich SC, is a great follow on Twitter if you don't already.
Yep.
After 4 games, USC's defense is tied for 7th in the country in fewest explosive plays allowed. That's 20 plus yards. Last year they ranked 124th. Considering how costly the very few explosive plays that USC has allowed this year have been, and how much of a talking point they are, that is a wild stat to consider. That is how close USC is to having this defense be really, really, really great.
But I also think that the reason it's such a thing that we talk about, the big plays the SC has allowed, is because A, they've directly led to scores, and B, when SC is 9th in the country in not allowing scoring drives, right? Like their scoring drive rate on defense, that means that when you do allow the scores and it is a big play, it makes it that much easier to look at it. Like those stick out. Like if this team was allowing more scoring drives, the big plays wouldn't take up such a big sense of the talking point, right? Like it wouldn't have that much real estate in it, but it does. Which again, on one hand, you're winning just about every other play. So, that's the more important thing. And on the other hand, but how good could you be if you just eliminated those things? Because you're very good at not having explosive plays, except for the 4 times when it leads to a touchdown. That is really damning. So, yeah. I can think of 5 plays SC has allowed, 5 explosive plays all season. Off the top of my head. The long run from LSU,
the long run from LSU, the 3 runs against
from Michigan. And the deep ball Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of those were all 5 of those touchdowns, touchdown drives. Not all of them were literal touchdowns, but they were all touchdown drives.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Either way,
have to commend you, Michael.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to a voicemail we got from the 702 area code, which I think is Nevada.
Michael, Alicia, I have a take on Zachariah Branch that I just had to get off my chest, and I just can't take any more of these takes that Zachariah Branch is underperforming or that Jacoby Lane is going to be the new wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. I think what we've seen in the stat line for Zachariah Branch through the first few games is exactly what folks should have expected in the preseason for 3 reasons. First, I think all the defenses that we've seen so far are clearly focused on Zachariah Branch based on what he did last year in the return game, whereas there's just less game film on guys like Jacoby Lane, and I think you're seeing USC's offense take advantage of that. The second is just Zachariah Branch is a more sophisticated type of receiver to use. I've been trying to come up with the right analogy, but it's almost like driving a manual versus an automatic. You can drive faster and control your speed better with a manual, but it takes more expertise and more experience to be able to drive it at all. What you're seeing with Miller and the receivers is he's just much more comfortable at this stage of his development throwing to guys like Jacoby Lane that are tall and that you can just throw a jump ball to and pick up some yards. Zachariah Branch is good not just because he's fast, but because he has an incredible sense of timing and acceleration. And guys like that are hard to cover, but they're also really hard to throw to. As the season goes on, you're going to see Miller Moss get more comfortable with him and pick up a lot of those big plays. And third is just the offensive line. For the type of player that Zachariah Branch is, it takes time for those routes to develop and for him to get behind the safety and hit the long ball. And I think as the offensive line gets better, if they do, you're going to see him pick up some big games. My prediction is by the end of the season, you're going to see Zachariah Branch with multiple 100-yard games, but it's going to take some time. And in the meantime, I think you're going to keep seeing guys like Jacoby Lane pick up big yardage, but I don't think that's going to be the big picture longer term. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call. Alicia, your thoughts?
I mean, I've been banging the drum that Zachariah Branch is not having a bad season. I think on special teams we can have a conversation. I think that's a separate conversation for me. In terms of offense, Jacoby Lane has 19 catches for 221 yards. Zachariah Branch has 18 catches for 217 yards. He's averaging 12.06 yards per catch, which is more than Jacoby Lane. So, like, again, I think expectations are playing a massive role in how people are judging Zachariah Branch at this point. I think he's doing fine. I think there is something to the idea that Jacoby Lane, you can just throw up a fade and Jacoby Lane will go get it. And Zachariah Branch is probably, you need to have the situation happen where you get him with the ball in his hands and have like yards after catch opportunities. And he hasn't really had very many of those yet this season. But if you keep throwing the ball to Zachariah Branch, I think you will eventually have those kinds of plays where he does his speed and his quickness just will beat defenses many times.
Yeah.
But either way, like I think it's a massive overreaction to say that Zachariah Branch is not a net positive for this offense and that he is not pulling his weight on this offense. I think he's absolutely pulling his weight in this offense.
Yeah, I look at it the way of like, yes, in terms of like the last point with the offensive line, I think the offensive line absolutely is a big factor why SC is not going deep downfield over the middle of the field on traditional deep shots. But we can see that they can throw fades to Jacoby Lane because it's a little bit quicker to throw a fade and just lob it up there. There were a couple of like slot fades to Zachariah Branch in the Michigan game in the second quarter on back-to-back plays, or like 2 and 3 plays, right? Those aren't necessarily slow developing that they can do to sort of get some vertical shape to the passing game. The other thing is, yeah, I think that I don't not buy the idea that like someone like Zachariah Branch could have more complexity in his routes and that could make things, longer developing. But also I think that the ways to get him the ball with the ball in his hands doesn't also have to be that complicated. Look at we talked a lot in the Carcasts about that mesh play, right? Where he's just running a drag underneath and they use Woody Marks to clear out on the wheel route, and it just opens up everything for Zachariah Branch to get the ball in his hands and run across the field. He had another one in the second half where it was the same thing, where he is, on a drag and just able to run that way. Those aren't slow developing plays. So I don't know how much of it is this is a problem of Zachariah Branch not running effective routes. How much of it is it's Miller Moss not being able to get the time to look at him. If it's not using Zachariah Branch effectively, it could be a little column A, B, and C. Either way, I think it all goes back to the expectations put on Zachariah Branch at the beginning of the season. In hindsight, absolutely were unfair.
Yes, and I do think I suspect, again, I don't know that I've watched the film closely enough to say this. I suspect that Zachariah Branch could probably be a more polished route runner, and we'd see him get more opportunities if he was. But I would also like to remind people, last year Zachariah Branch had 31 catches for 320 yards. This year, and that was through 11 games that he participated in. He's played 4 games and he's at 217 yards, 18 catches. Like he's the second leading receiver by 4 yards.
Right.
And
there's also like 4 dudes on the depth chart not there anymore. So like that, right, I think that plays a big role there too.
Yes, but the point is that like he's not doing a bad job.
No, I agree.
He's doing fine. Is he an elite game-changing receiver at this stage in his career? No, and I certainly think it's fine to be disappointed that he isn't there. but it's also a massive overreaction to say that he is somehow a detriment to this offense. I do not think he is a detriment to this offense. It's tough.
Let's go to a voicemail we got from Cam in Frisco, Texas.
Hello, Rant Detroit. Cameron from Frisco, Texas. This past game against Wisconsin felt a lot like Christmas. I don't know why. That reminded me of a couple of famous Christmas movies that we've watched growing up. Obviously, the game was all about the return of the Grinch who stole Caleb Williams' college career in Alex Grinch coming back to the Coliseum. And then it also felt a lot like A Christmas Carol because our offense felt a lot like the Christmas pass, a Clay Helton offense, turnovers, or offensive line play, etc. And then all of a sudden, halftime hits. The Christmas pass once again returns, but in the form of a Pete Carroll offense, where it shows up in the second half. Things are clicking. Receivers are catching the ball. The offensive line is kind of protecting the quarterback. And Miller Moss is mossing it up like he has every other game this season, where he's been able to turn up the heat, score touchdown passes, and make an incredible run to seal the deal, and for the defense to play spectacular like a Pete Carroll defense. So it's very fascinating to watch, and I never ever thought that we would ever have a USC football game that felt a lot like Christmas, at least it's Christmas and not like, Michael's least favorite holiday, Halloween, or even Thanksgiving, because we also know that Michael does not like Thanksgiving because of Alicia mixing all of her food together and enjoying a Thanksgiving plate. So I'm glad it was a holiday that Mike can relate to and also enjoy. Fight on, fight out, beat the Gophers.
Thanks for the call as always, Cam. And I think you have to hit this.
You have really good food takes.
Thank you. I enjoy the creativity to put together all of the Christmas analogies. Your thoughts?
It's still September. I don't want to be talking about Christmas. I fully expect to go to Costco tomorrow and see like Christmas tree decorations up, and I'm gonna be mad about it. So, yeah, a good analogy, but also, I'm bracing for overly early Christmas stuff, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't doubt that'll be the case. Let's go to the last voicemail we got is from Dan in Valley Village. Again, he called back.
Hey, Raider Troy, it's Dan again from Valley Village. I couldn't agree more. You absolutely have to change locations when the team is struggling. My kiddo wanted to go to his friend's house, but he was watching the game, and as soon as the game was in half, we're like, we have to get out of here. So I wound up going to a whole different house, and my buddy's house, and watching the game from there. And that is also the reason why they turned it around. Yes, you have to change locations when they're struggling. It's not a think about it. It's a must do. Thanks. Fight on.
Yeah, the in-game voodoo it's real. It's real.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, West Texas Mice in the chat says, I know Alicia is ecstatic about the job that Kyle McDonald's doing. You are, right? Like,
I mean, I was ecstatic about the job that he was doing in previous seasons when he was at USC, and now Tony Anthony Jones is
Pat Rule on that offensive line. I think can get a little bit more out of it.
Can I believe Bob
the play calling by Hugh Jackson. It could be a little bit better. Could be. I know he's got John Morton in his ear, but all right, we got a YouTube comment in our grades video. If you didn't watch our grades video, be sure to check out the grades video that we put out, post-game grades from the SC Wisconsin game over on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, head on over to YouTube and check out the videos we put up there. If you listen to us on YouTube, just open up a new tab or save it for later. The YouTube comment from John says, here's a question for you, Michael and Alicia. How can the O-line get better at run blocking when they are only running at a 38% clip?
Are we interpreting that as they're only running 38% of the time?
I think that's the implication. I haven't looked at the actual breakdown of.
I mean, I would guess that they're only running 38% of the time because they're not running particularly well when they are running. And at a certain point, you have to start throwing the ball because you can't be running the ball on 3rd and short when you're in 3rd and 7. You're going to be throwing the ball. So USC will get better at run blocking when USC's offensive linemen do better at run blocking. Like I think you have to hope that they do get better as the season goes on. Find what they're good at. Like I think one thing that I noticed in this game, Emmanuel Pregnon pulling him and having him go be lead blocker on a run to the right seemed to work in this game. I would do that more. Pulling Alani Noah to run to the left, I would stop doing that. Like there are things that maybe they can sort of figure out what does and doesn't work from that offensive line and be more effective running the ball. But yeah, I don't think running the ball more is the key to getting better at running the ball when you're getting stuffed on first down when you run.
Yeah, so I'm looking it up. There, SC has run 232 plays, 111 runs, 121 passes. So 111 divided by 232 is 47.8%. The 38% might have been the breakdown that Wisconsin gave out. I don't have it in front of me literally, but I would say the other thing is, and I would love someone to actually do a play-by-play thing. And if Shotgun does this over at uscfootball.com, then awesome. A breakdown of the RPOs too, because like that is a factor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of RPOs. And so if you're choosing pass on the RPO, then that doesn't mean that you weren't intending to run on that play. It was an option that you're taking, and you're usually taking that option because of what the defense is giving you. So like I find the run pass ratio talk very difficult in that sense. Obviously not all passes are RPOs. But I think it is worth mentioning that can be a factor here. The other thing too is like, do what you're good at. SC's good throwing the ball. SC doesn't need to run the ball 2/3 of the time like it's 1962. They don't need to run the ball on every drive multiple times. They need to be able to run the ball effectively when needed. And I think the prime example of that is the LSU game. Did they run the ball great? No.
But enough.
They ran it enough and effectively when they needed to. That's what you need. If you do that, then everything else is gravy on top of that for me. And that goes the same with passing, right? Like, be effective in what you do. If you're effective, then I don't care what the breakdown is.
So again, this gets into the question of what is the difference between a USC team that wins, 8-9 games and has a relatively successful season, and what's the difference between a USC that actually contends for the Big Ten title. And being able to run the ball better is one of those. But right now, given the limitations that USC has on this offensive line, they're running the ball adequately. And that's what you have to sort of work with. This is the offensive line that you're working with. I as one of our callers said before, there are no reinforcements coming. So you work with what you got. And right now with what they've got, they're running the ball adequately.
Yeah, I would say so. I agree. All right. Let's go to YouTube stuff. We got a super chat from West Texas Mike.
Hey.
At halftime, I almost changed out of my SC jersey, but no. I yelled at my TV, I'm not effing changing. You change. You effing change. I
and
like
the team
that.
changed.
I like that. They listened.
Yeah.
They listened. They absolutely listened.
Meanwhile, I changed everything. And guess what? On Saturday, I will be wearing my pajama pants with the border collies on them, and I will be wearing. What shirt did I change into? I need to figure that out.
You're giving ammo to.
Oh, I wore the my cotton bowl shirt, my comfiest cotton bowl shirt.
Famously good to SC, the Cotton Bowl.
Well, maybe not good to SC, but that shirt that we got from the Cotton Bowl, not the one that has like the teams on it, but literally just a shirt that just has the little Cotton Bowl logo. What's the brand? Cotton.
It's a Goodyear Cotton Bowl shirt, but like that's not who makes
whatever
the
it
shirt,
is. That's the comfiest damn shirt that I own, and I was
Texas
in need of
cotton, presumably.
I was in need of comfort, and so I put that on. So guess what I'm going to be wearing on Saturday until another wardrobe change is necessary.
Yeah, you mentioned PJs with border collies on them. Alicia, let's check in on the border collie.
Hey,
and good old Jessie Cam, we got it up.
Jessie, you've decapitated yourself.
She is not there. Also, her little roadkill toys are here, and it looks one of them, the one that's like a cow.
Yeah,
like vaguely looks like her.
It does, the way that she's laying out there.
It's,
and
it's
then
unsettling.
Yeah.
But there's her paws, and half of her body.
Yeah.
With her counter shading.
Yes.
Yeah. So. There's Jessie in most
there.
of her glory, but not all.
Yes.
So
again, Jessie finds a way to thwart the Jessie Cam at every turn. So.
Yeah, always and forever. Yeah. All right. Other comments we got here on the YouTubes. Mari says, "Do you believe the conversation around Zachariah Branch's lack of production led to the muffed punt? I feel like he was pressing on that play."
I think so too. I think that there was a lot of conversation about him not being aggressive enough with punt returns against Michigan. And so then I think he tried to get aggressive. And unfortunately, Wisconsin has an Aussie rules punter who puts a ball that looks like a friggin' knuckleball out there. And he was, he made the wrong decision to go for that ball. But I think because the punt before that, if I remember correctly, went straight over his head and got downed at like the 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he was just trying to make something happen. And unfortunately, it backfired. And this is going to be one of the things that happens if you want to have the pluses of Zachariah Branch. You also have to deal with the negatives. I think he's not a great decision maker on punts, but that's why I would continue to be in his ear whispering, be conservative, be conservative, be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Because once or twice his opportunities will come and he'll make something from him. You don't need him to be pressing.
Yeah, we're going to have the dumbest conversation of all time right now. Of the 2 muffed punts, which one was worse? SC's or Wisconsin?
Wisconsin's was way worse.
That's what I thought.
Because at least Zachariah Branch is running up to try and catch an Aussie style punt, which again is a knuckleball end over end.
Yeah.
The punt that the the Wisconsin guy drops literally just hits him in the chest.
Yeah.
It's not it's just sort of your conventional punt ball.
Right.
And it just hits him straight in the chest. And it doesn't, I don't know what was going on with him there.
Yeah. And even if Zachariah Branch didn't touch it, which it's hard to tell on the camera angles, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Jalen Smith that went diving for the ball. You have to
to assume that it got touched. Yeah.
You have to. Like that's an unfortunate place for him to be in.
He could die. Like he could dive.
He could die
better.
I hope not.
He could dive in a more strategic manner to try and make sure that he recovers that ball. But at that point, it's
a frantic.
He is making
thing.
The right decision.
Yeah.
Zachariah Branch was making the wrong decision. It felt like the Wisconsin guy. It wasn't a decision. It was just literally like it was those drops at the goal line against Utah State, where it's like you were thinking about running already and you didn't do the securing of the catch.
All muffs are bad though, so it's not a victory to have a less bad muff. All right. Richard says, how much of SC's second half success is the opposing line getting tired? I think that's been a factor, at least in the Wisconsin game, but potentially the reverse in the Michigan game. in the sense of like, I think SC's success in the Michigan game was in part because there was one stretch where like Michigan didn't like run a play for like 45, 50 minutes of real time. And SC's defense had been getting gassed before that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that stuff does factor into it.
Maybe
it's hard to say.
In this one, I think it's hard to say because the first drive out of the gate, you could see something slightly different with USC's defensive front to me.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was they were bringing guys up closer to the line of scrimmage. But at the same time, like it felt like USC's defensive front, the four guys up front, were giving less ground, and I don't think that was a fatigue issue. One on one side or the other. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm snickering because of this next question from Kenny. If the 2022 USC offense and the 2024 USC defense, what's the final score of the Georgia SC national title game? This is good. It's a good question.
We said 2022.
Yes. Remember, like the crazy thing is, I think SC could have made it there even with the bad defense. Like, because
the tricky thing,
if Caleb Williams doesn't get hurt, maybe they win that game even with the bad defense in the Pac-12 championship game. And then that Michigan game was a crazy shootout that TCU beat them, which leads me to think that like SC in a shootout, that would have been possible. Like SC could have got there with a bad defense, but if they would have had a good defense, yeah, I think there's no question in anyone's mind. I think SC gets to the national championship game. Do they win it? No, they do not win it.
See, and this is my thing: is I think that offensive line was probably the best that USC has had.
That's the other
in
question.
A while.
But
I still don't know that they hold up against Georgia's defensive front.
And do they still get hurt? Are the injuries?
The injury's still a factor. And I'm just being honest. I really love this defense. It's great to see a well-coached, well-drilled, disciplined, for the most part, defense at USC. But quite frankly, this defensive front, the defensive line, I don't think they would hold up against a Georgia level offensive line. So I think USC probably still loses that game. It's because of the trenches, but
42-24.
It's Caleb with some Caleb magic. Yeah, maybe things go crazy.
42-24 Georgia. Yeah. Especially because Georgia in that game, it was SC against Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, Alabama against Notre Dame, in an Orange Bowl, even though it was a championship game, but at Joe Robbie. In the sense of like, as soon as they stepped foot on the field, like they were unloading the clip completely. Like there was no way Georgia was losing that game. And they had saved all their energy for that game. Just like SC and Alabama did those other games, those other blowouts. So yeah, I think SC would have absolutely got convincingly beat by Georgia. Yeah. All right, last question. Berto says, do you think the defense is this good more due to scheme and coaching or due to actual talent? I wonder where the ceiling is once we could start recruiting more and better defenders.
This defense is well coached and well schemed. I think that USC has talent, the same talent that USC has had, plus some really, really, really great additions like Kamari Ramsey. But we're seeing Jalen Smith be unlocked to be as good as he could be. We're seeing Eric Gentry being unlocked to be as good as he can be. But when it comes down to it, like this defensive front is what they're doing is, I think, beyond their talent level.
Yeah.
I think that the defense as a whole, if you gave this same personnel to Alex Grinch or Todd Orlando or even Clancy Pendergast, I think you're still giving up a hell of a lot more points and looking a hell of a lot worse than this defense is looking under Danton Lynn. I think you have to give Danton Lynn and the entire coaching staff a ton of credit, because I don't think that this defense is more talented man to man than most of the defenses USC has had over the last 5 years. The difference is scheme and coaching.
Yeah, and from a strict talent perspective, there's a lot of 3-star players on that defense. And this is not me saying that as a negative. No. It's as there's a lot of guys that have proved that they developed well, or they are, well coached, or they are, late bloomers, or whatever that is. Like Eric Gentry was a 3-star coming out of high school, but he's arguably SC's best defensive player, him and Kamari Ramsey, right? But I think that in a perfect world, if you had 5-star talent who played as 5 stars and were 5-star gems, if you're playing the video game, then I think the sky's the limit for SC's defense. So, all right, we'll be back later this week with on Wednesday with our USC Minnesota preview. Also, be sure to stay subscribed and like the channel and all of that, because we'll have our USC wins if video talking about SC and Minnesota later on this week too. Until next time, we'll see ya.
See ya.
See ya.